Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Silveri from Michigan Food and Farming Systems. Welcome to our Michigan Virtual Farmer Forum in partnership with North Central Region SARE. SARE stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. It's a joint project between USDA and Extension land-grant universities. We're also here today with Michigan State University Extension and Michigan SARE coordinator, Dr. Adam Ingrayo. We have a great lineup of folks for you today to talk about their participation in the SARE Farmer Rancher Grant. We're going to hear from Frank Corrado, Leah Sienkowski, and Lance Cray. Did I say your name right, Leah?
It's Leah, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Leah Sienkowski. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to Frank. Actually, some housekeeping real quick as we get started. If you're attending with us today, you'll notice along the bottom of the screen that we have automatically muted you upon entering. If you have questions for presenters or for MIFFS, please pop them in the chat. If you're joining us in Facebook Live, please feel free to enter them into the comment section on the Facebook Live feed. Lauren Marquardt, our co-director, is manning that helm, and we'll transfer them over to the chat in the webinar. If you have a question, you can also use the bottom, the icon at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. Chat's the best way to get a hold of us, but we're gonna turn it over to Frank Corrado to talk about his project with SARE and then ask for questions afterward. Frank, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay, and thank you. I appreciate it, Jen. I'm waiting for Lauren to bring up the PowerPoint.
I'm working on it. We gotta enable screen sharing, Jen.
Okay, I can start. You want me to start talking, and then I'll wait on you to bring it up?
That would be great.
So I'm delighted to be with you folks today. SARE is a wonderful program, at least from my point of view. This was our second grant with SARE. It was the idea was to bring up an educational, there we go, program for kids to give them a better idea of how wildflowers and bees and blueberries work all together. So let's go to the next slide. So who are we? Well, we're a small farm in near about 10 miles out of South Haven, Michigan, called Moss Funnel Farms. It's got something to do with my son's band music name, the Funnel of Music or something, going way back. Makes no sense, but it sounds good. So we grow blueberries using organic practices near South Haven, Michigan. We were in business about 12 years. We had previously received a SARE grant to help teach blueberry farmers, or to help other blueberry farmers in our area do a quick transition to organic practices. It was a really interesting project from SARE, and we were grateful for the opportunity to do this. So we already had been through the SARE process once, and we learned a lot from it, and it was fairly rigorous. So it took us 2 tries basically to get this second grant, which was the one for Bees Pleeze. The comments in 2017 review or 2018 review were that we needed to do more sharing of our project with other farmers. We needed to do more field days. I suppose everybody is required to do that. We needed to measure whether this project really was going to be successful, and if it was successful. And there were some minor concerns about insurance, and we did need to spell out a little better educational program. So those were the tasks that we had to undertake when we reapplied in 2018. Okay, next slide. So we tweaked the proposals to basically get more information out during and after the project was over. The Great Lakes Fruit Expo was a major place that we were able to show a very simple poster for how this project could be successful and what we had done. Also, we had participated in a couple of events there at the talking sessions at the expo that helped us talk more about the program. We also worked with, got some technical help in putting basically the little boards together that were along this trail we developed. We worked with the Michigan State Entomology Program, certainly with Adam Ingrau, who's on the program today. He was there, and you'll see him a little more in our video. We reached out also to the Peggy Nodebart Nature Museum in Chicago, which has a terrific program on pollinators, and our local conservation district in Paw Paw, Michigan as well, for their support. We did add some metrics about and put in methods for people to use a QR code to evaluate the program. Plus, we made sure the teachers that came out for the first run gave us their opinion, as well as the kids. And we clarified the insurance issues as well. Okay, next slide. So our target group for education, for getting people out to this site, and let me clarify what the site is. It's a 2-acre piece of land at the back of our back field. We have 2 fields, and the second field has an open 2-acre spot next to the blueberry bushes. So in that spot, our plan was to build a trail for kids to walk, just simply to walk, with lots of little stops along the way. I think we had like 9 stops. The type of kids we were going after were obviously kids from the local area, grade school kids. We also wanted to get families visiting. This is a very heavy recreational area, as you probably know. The South Haven area is just growing leaps and bounds as a very popular vacation spot in the last 10 years. And also, we are basically a retail blueberry operation, so we have lots of U-pickers coming to the farm in the summer. So we wanted to make this part of their experience at the farm. Next slide. So here's what we did. We got the trail up and running pretty quickly in the spring of 18. And that was the easy part, building the trail. We planted wildflower. We got some wildflowers planted there as well, perennials. And that's an extraordinarily expensive process, we realized. And also, the planter that we borrowed from our conservation district was so heavy that our 8,000-pound tractor went up in the air when it was trying to pull this thing along. And we also that year had a terribly difficult hot weather. So when we were building the little building there, we were working in 95-degree heat to try and get it done. Next slide. So we wanted to make it kid-friendly. I don't know about you folks, but when I go to various museums, both indoors and then outdoor exhibits, most of the copy that's written for people to read as they go along a trail or a path is extremely complicated and very adult focused. And we wanted to make this as simple as we could and make it interesting for kids. So we really focused on the educational learning part of it. We built the trail on this 2-acre parcel in a 1/6 mile figure-8 configuration. And we put a little shortcut in it for little kids so that they could take part of the trail, not have to do it all. And as you can see, you can see that we built a little mound for kids to look over. It's kind of an interesting piece of geography because it's up high, the little building's up high, and it kind of swoops down so you've got a nice spot for overlooking the whole thing. Next slide. So this is an example at the top here of one of our panels that you can see in the bottom left. They have these panels all along the field. We tried to be clever. We tried to make it simple for people. We also, in our little kiosk that we built, we also had 3 panels there as well. They were designed with a lot of care and designed also to be cost effective. So they're on vinyl and they stay out in the field year round. Next slide. We reached out to quite a large amount of a wide range of school districts in the area, but frankly, it was late summer. People were still on vacation at the school districts. And so we were successful really with our local district. We got 5th graders coming in for the opening from the Bangor School District. NRCS, Michigan State officials, showed up for the opening. Adam was our prime speaker. We had a nice turnout of kids for the opening. Next slide. So it was a warm day. We had 90 kids out there, all 5th graders, great support from MSU, like I said. The kids were terrific. I guess 5th grade is a special time for, it's at that time, it's just before the hormones kick in. And the kids are still interested, they're enthusiastic, they're not super young. They're kind of in a really, that's kind of a sweet spot, I think, for education with children. And certainly to be outside is a fun thing as well for a field trip. So we had a great opening day. Next slide. So we're going to see a video now of that opening day, and you'll see Adam in there as well. If we got the audio. You get some audio?
Slight technical delay, bear with us, folks.
There you go. You got it.
So much so that it's difficult to stimulate. That's why we use the smoker. It helps calm that water. And it smells like
happened with her.
Creating a space that presents food for them. But what is the food that bees have to have? What things do they eat? Nectar, which comes from flowers. What else comes from flowers that bees eat? Pollen. So those two things bees have to have in order to make baby bees. And without it, they can't make bees. So what this habitat right here is it's a big supermarket for honeybees and for all sorts of other bees. Lots of different pollen, lots of different nectar, and that allows them to be able to make new bees, which is really important because honeybees are having a really tough time right now. So these are all very important things that are coming from this habitat. And if we think about ancient Egypt and our ancestors from way, way back that were keeping honeybees, this is continuing that relationship with honeybees. Now, 4,500 years later, we are evidence.
I'm sorry that there was one part there that got that somehow we jumped out of. There was a little girl with a kind of a black curly hair, black curl in her hair, and that was the best quote in the whole day. And she said, "I said, what did you think of the thing?" She said, "Of this trail." She said, "Oh, it's all right. It was all right." She said, "But you know what? I saw this dead mole, and it was really cool." So that was the highlight for me. She actually thought it was great. That was nature for her that day. The kids were engaged, as you can kind of see. It was a little bit of chaotic, but Adam did a great job of engaging them. And we had some other, he brought a whole bunch of exhibits with and things, which really added to that opening day. The teachers were very positive in their evaluations. Obviously, somebody else could bear the load of the kids for a few hours, and that made him happy as well. Next slide. The trail, we learned that the trail was the easy part. Weather was always a factor. It was a very hot summer. We think we fell down a little bit on promotion, but it came right at a very busy part of at the end of harvest. But the content is definitely we felt definitely was engaging for the kids. Next slide. So it started in the fall and really didn't get traction because the schools already were up and running and doing other things. We were swamped at the farm, and it was hard for us to do both the farm and put in extra time at the Bees Pleeze. We had designed it originally to be self-sustaining, to be someplace you could just drive up to and not have to, we wouldn't have to do much. But that's and we passed out thousands of flyers for people on it. On the thing, and we just didn't get as much turnout as we thought. Last spring, this last spring, we had a microblast come through, and as I mentioned earlier, this thing is at the top of a hill, kind of a hill rise, and we built this thing very well. It should have been able to take a bomb hit. However, the wind got under it, and a microblast just toppled the whole little building down. So we need to go back out there. We didn't have any time this year because we were swamped with people trying to get away from COVID. So we're going to hopefully get it up and running again next year. Okay, next slide. The good news is that we'll get things up again and running because we want to make our farm more of a destination. We want more things for people to do at the farm. So this is becoming a very integral part of our plan for 2021. We're going to make more of an effort to bring in summer tourists. Last year, as you all know, it was pretty difficult to work around the COVID restrictions. the thing that is satisfying really for us is the pollinator education for kids is hot these days. You can see maybe a little bit of a headline to the right here. Just about 2 weeks ago, I believe, Ravenna School District in Michigan received a $100,000 grant for pollinator education involving its kids. And that's pretty amazing, I think. That's a testament to the importance of the subject these days. So overall, I think this was a great experience for us. We need to tweak it and bring it back and somehow get more people involved in it. Our experience was SARE willing to take gambles on projects like this and projects like organic farmer education. Speaks well, I think, to the program and how it really does help farmers. Thank you. Any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Frank. That was awesome. What a cool way to incorporate agritourism and some value-added revenue into your farm. Such a cool thing to be able to involve kids. If you have any questions, once again, we'd ask that you enter them into the chat, either on the Zoom meeting if you're with us or into the comments on the Facebook live stream. We'll also hold space for comments and questions at the end. Next, we're going to turn it over to Leah Sienkowski, who's going to talk to us about her SARE project. Take it away, Leah.
Awesome. I also sent a PowerPoint to Lauren. I don't know if there's a way to show that or if I should bring it up on my end.
We can do it for you, or you can. Looks like John's loading it right now.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for putting this together. I'm a little bit behind Frank, so I'm glad to have this opportunity to share my project. Yeah, so my name's Leah Sienkowski, and I have a very small herd of goats in Ada, Michigan, right outside Grand Rapids. So the title, Designing a Mobile Milking Parlor for Educational Goat Farms, is quite a mouthful. And I think it has lots of applications for all sorts of goat people. You can go to the next slide, I think. So my little farm is located currently at the back of my elementary school where I went as a kid, Ada Christian. So they have about 37 acres, lots of brush, lots of woods, plenty of space to graze goats all season long, or all growing season. I started out originally before they could be milked. I did a few different grazing projects throughout the county, and that had its challenges. The goats got out, etc. So, but we've come to a good place now at the school. Well, we got kicked out a couple times there too with the escape, but we figured it out. So then we actually ended up expanding to another, this time a private middle school. And I really enjoyed working with that group of students too. But currently are just operating as a one herd, one school farm. So as my dreams have changed, as my situation has changed, this like mobile milking parlor, mobile milking space has always sort of been in the back of my mind. Initially, because I was like, I want to graze different locations and charge for my grazing projects. And so the parlor would allow me to milk my grazing goats. And then as I expanded to a different school, I thought, well, this is perfect. I could service the different goats in different locations. And then I realized I'd just be milking all day. So now kind of my newest sort of realization is that I think similar to Frank, using it as sort of a mobile education or as an educational experience, but being able to move it to more like places that don't really have a lot of agriculture, places more inner city or more suburban, things like that. So I applied for a SARE grant in 2019, and I'm slowly working through it. I still have some sharing to do yet this month. I have another talk coming at the end of the month, but it was a pretty smooth process applying, and yeah, I've been really enjoying digging into the design and engineering of it. My grant is a little different in that it is more of a theoretical grant. It's not, I didn't actually build this thing, so we'll learn more about the plans on the next slide. So conveniently, my father owns a design studio that he just recently sold, but I worked with them to design and engineer, put together a floor plan for this project, and they did some renderings. I also had a really enjoyable time meeting for the first time my local dairy inspectors. Currently, I operate as a herd share, so I don't have any inspection, but it was nice meeting them and getting to know sort of the standards in Michigan for the pasteurized milk ordinance, which is one of the hardest states to get a dairy certified in. So that was kind of interesting to learn. I created a bill of materials and priced out a custom trailer from our local Hallmark, and did a little bit of reaching out to cheesemakers to gauge sort of goat milk market in the area. Next slide. Awesome. So here are some different views you can see of what we ended up with so far. So there's actually 3 rooms to our trailer design. So as you can see, yeah, it has a hookup on the back, so you can hook it up to your van or truck or whatnot. Yeah, so the front area there you can see with the goats. I think those are actually adapted deer, but they're supposed to be goats. They are in the parlor area, so that silhouette is kind of showing. Unmute. Sorry. Join audio. Did I lose something?
No, you're good. Keep going.
Awesome. So behind the parlor area, there's 2 other rooms that you can't see in this drawing, but one would be the washroom, which has the sink and some storage space, and the other room is the bulk tank area, the milk house, where you would cool the milk, and yeah, keep it cold back there. Yeah, so we designed it in mind to meet the pasteurized milk ordinances of Michigan. So we designed it to be clean and safe and certifiable, but also in mind that people could use it sort of in a lot of different applications. Here we go. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that I see this parlor being utilized. Obviously for me, it would be kind of a way to diversify my income and be able to travel to places of learning, nonprofits, camps, things like that, and do sort of teaching demonstrations. So I do a lot of that now just at the school that I'm at. The school actually pays me currently to be at the school keeping my goats there. So it's a very sweet gig. I could use in the future the ability to diversify that and be able to bring it to other places. But originally my dream being to do some land clearing in addition to doing the milking. That would be one application. I could see different goat breeders. There's so many people that breed goats that I imagine it's more of a hobby, but could turn it into a business by putting on demonstrations. And different agritourism farms expanding their offerings to include milking as well. A goat hobby farmer expanding into a business. A new farmer accessing shared land, free land, grazing another farm's cover crop, or doing some crop rotations on a different farm, clearing out brush for your neighbor, things like that. A school or a 4-H educator using the parlor to train their students to milk or to teach other things. Or a farmer could use the trailer as a multi-purpose transport vehicle. So if you're getting a trailer anyway, and this is the kind of a way to do a dual purpose transport. Oh, I forgot to mention that I was starting to say I do a lot of milking demonstrations, and for some reason, if kids just think it's like weird or something, but I always find they're very mesmerized by the milking demo. So I think it's hitting on something. They eat a lot of dairy in their lives and experience that a lot on the eating end, on the consumer end, but getting to know sort of the farm to table, the background, the aspect of how it's produced, kids do really seem to enjoy. Sorry, next slide. Awesome. So here are a few different views you can see. The one kind of on the left, the lower left, is sort of what the audience would view. Really, it's viewable from 3 sides, so it's like a little more than 180, so maybe like 200 degrees of viewing area. So in terms of like an outdoor learning experience, COVID safe, everyone could definitely spread out and be able to see. Yeah, so It's designed so for like a bucket milker. So you can see that's that silver thing on the bottom left. So that's really the simplest milking system you can implement. A modification, of course, would be like a more sophisticated pipeline system that you could use that would be quicker and less hands-on. But the buckets can fit behind the goats there or between the goats. And the way with only milking 2 goats at once, that works really well for this system for educational purposes, because you can walk all the way around the goats. Of course, if you were trying to be really efficient, you could milk up to 4 goats. You'd probably need a little bit of fencing on either side to kind of keep them in. And then you would need back access. Right now, you can't really see it, but there's a ramp that comes down. So this the view we're talking about on the left is covered, of course, by a back, but instead of rolling up, it pulls down into a ramp. So that's how the goats access the parlor. But in another modification, they could come up the side and then you could stand in the back and milk the goats from the ground. So that is an option. And then to the right of that, you can see the side view with the goat and the stanchion coming right out of the ground. And then the back room there, which you can see a little bit of the silhouette of a sink. And then that gray thing is like the bulk tank. I just put in a 14-gallon bulk tank, which is about the smallest you can get. I think there's a little bit smaller possibly, but depends on how frequently you sell your milk, obviously, and how many goats you have that you're milking. But you could manipulate that as you wanted. So that would be the milk house, the bulk tank cooling room. And then that right up above, that bird's eye view there, you can see from there, you can see the drain in the floor in the parlor. That's one thing for the pasteurized milk ordinance, you need a drain. And then in the other 2 rooms, you can see from up above, there's a hand sink with the bulk tank and then a 2-compartment sink in the top room. And that's where you would wash and store the milk can. So we priced this all out from Hallmark. So actually in the parlor, there's like cabinets and a sink. And that's kind of where you'd keep all of your filters or cleaning solutions and stuff. And that area is built right into the trailer. So that's included in that price. You can kind of see there's some stairs. It's kind of built similar to a camper where the stairs pull out from those rooms. So you access both of those rooms from the outdoors. So after you're done milking, you'd walk around the trailer to enter either the cool tank where you'd pour the milk into the bulk tank, or walk the other way around, go up the stairs in order to wash your milk can there. So if I were to use this parlor as a sort of demonstration parlor, the process that I would take is I would trailer my trailer on my truck. I'd drive to whatever location I was teaching at. I'd have to park and stabilize the trailer, unload the goats. I didn't really mention that, but 7 goats could theoretically fit across. Probably that would be like an 8.5 wide trailer. We have, I think it's like 7 by 7 feet, 7 inches. So probably more like 6 goats tops can fit trailered in this area. Another modification would be you could add another kind of a wall that would come up so that you could bring younger goats, since they tend to like lay down when they travel. So there's a little bit more room for that if needed. Of course, you could throw them in your truck, I suppose, too. But anyhow, so that's kind of an option if you were to travel with your goats inside there as like a hauling area. So anyhow, you'd unload your goats. We haven't really come up with a better portable fence than like a electric net kind of fence. Those aren't great for petting zoos because they electric shock children, but that'd be something to look into. So yeah, you need to hook up water. Another pasteurized milk challenge is that you can't have a clean water tank. And so you need to have a water hookup, which for a school would not be a problem. If you were trying to access a really far out field in the middle of nowhere to milk your goats, then that would be an issue. So there are some limitations we'll get into. But yeah, so you hook up to water, you turn on your generator, assemble your milk machine, you get your goats in position, connect the vacuum, begin the milking process. And like I said, you'd have to walk the milk around to empty it out. And then because there's water in your trailer, you'd be able to use your tankless water heater to heat that up, totally wash down anything that needed to be washed. And then to exit, you'd have to reload your goats, reconnect your trailer, and be on your way. That was a lot of information. You can move on to the next slide, I think. So I got into some of these challenges already, but obviously there's a certain cost, which I'll get to, and that would have to be recouped by grazing or education. If you were a bigger farm that already had a parlor and this was just kind of a second one, you could, you'd have, well, we'll get into that, but you'd have to somehow recoup the cost, of course. The tested water thing we got into a little bit. Tanks are not allowed for a certified parlor in Michigan, so you would need to hook up directly to a source, unless, of course, you're doing a herd share, and then you could do whatever you wanted because you're not being inspected. Also, you need a nearby bathroom. In order to have this normally on your farm, you'd have a bathroom somewhere nearby that would be you could utilize. So if you're out in the middle of the field somewhere, you wouldn't have water, you wouldn't have a bathroom, obviously. There's also a limited capacity. So like I said, 6 to 7 goats could be transported. 2 or 3 could be milked at once with some modifications. You need a place. There's it's in the front, nearer to the truck. There's a space for a gray water tank. So you would need a certified spot to dump that, an approved location, like a campsite or something like that. You'd also have to get some certifications, which you would have to get if you had a mobile or an immobile parlor as well, milk house as well. But you'd have to have your farm be grade A certified, your parlor be grade A raw dairy certified, and then you'd also have to get a milk hauling license because you'd probably use your trailer to haul your milk to wherever you're processing it. Also, it's hard to do a random inspection when you're moving around. So you'd have to work with your local dairy inspector to report your milking locations or submit some kind of calendar. Okay, sorry. I should have probably put the costing first, but that was asked about. So we'll get to that next, maybe? Is that the next slide? Oh, sorry. One more slide and then we'll get to cost. So we talked about most of these modifications, I think, already. But if you wanted to be more efficient, you could have a pipeline system for the milking. And you wouldn't necessarily need a bulk tank if you were herd share because you're not certified. So you could use some kind of modified freezer system, which would be cheaper. That's one of the more expensive parts. And then, so there's actually a farm in Indiana, Greta's Goats, the Winklebauers, and they have one of these, except for it's just a parlor. So the back 2 rooms don't exist. So that front parlor, they're able to drive back to their farm, their main site, and wash it down and clean it up. And then they just take their milk and they'll bring it inside and dump it in their immobile, their permanent bulk tank. So that's another modified option, which would make it a cheaper trailer to produce. And obviously you wouldn't need necessarily electricity or water, things like that. So actually you need electricity unless you're milking by hand, but you wouldn't need the water. So that's another option. And then I think we'll get to the price on the next slide. All right. So we got a quote from Hallmark, and it's $16,795. So that's the build out, which includes the 3 rooms. It includes the sink, the 1 sink in the parlor area, along with that kind of built-in cabinet to keep everything. You'd probably need to buy a couple more storage spaces in the back rooms. And then here, as you can see on the right, is the readout of all the other stuff you'd need. So generator, the tankless heater, you need washable walls and washable floors. The drainage, like I showed you, is built in, but you need some kind of vinyl flooring, or people use RFP panels for the walls for them to be washable. You also need good lighting in each of the rooms. So you need to make sure there's some pretty solid lights. The cooling tank, so the one I priced out was a little over $2,000. That's the smallest one that I saw. You need another hand wash sink in the other 2 rooms. And what else? Well, I use the kitchen sink to wash my hands in the washroom. And then I put in there a milk bucket washer, which is just to wash the tubing and the claws that hook up to the goat teats, because I think that saves a lot of time and makes things more pleasant. but that you could get away without that, of course. And then if you don't already have some kind of milking system, like the milk bucket assembly, then you need that as well. And I added like a filter right in there so you can just filter it in line. And then I also added the headpiece and the tray where the goats are locked in. Those, that cost, you could also buy those to insert into the trailer, which of course you need to remove during travel and things. I think that covers all the pricing. So the total cost of this system would be $24,742 approximately. I have some unlisted items like the portable fence. If you were to keep your goats in a portable fence while you got ready to milk and did the demonstrations, you'd need like a hay feeder and a water trough, other things to store your goods, feed, cleaners, etc. in the trailer, in the cabinets. And then I didn't put in a PA system, which you'd probably want potentially if you were talking to a large group. Awesome. So I think that covers that slide. So obviously I had a hard time doing the financial feasibility because everyone's farm is so different, and this would interact differently depending on what you were doing, whether or not it's like a main source of income or a side source, or you're not even caring about the milk and you're just dumping it and you're talking more about the milking demonstrations. So there's a lot of different ways this could go, but I sort of priced out, did like a sample business plan, was sort of a combination of using the milking while you graze goats and then using the milking as sort of an educational service. So I kind of priced out a combination. So if you're a goat farmer, you probably know generally goat farming is somewhat of a lifestyle choice, and it pays for you spending time with goats, and it pays for your farm that you live on and your phone bill, but it's not like a super, I think the median income for goat farmers is between like 25 and 47,000 a year. So, you know, yeah, depends what you're looking for. But I have 7 goats, and that's kind of what would fit in this system. And so I know that they pay for themselves, but they don't necessarily pay you a living wage. So this would allow you to do that theoretically. If you could operate your grazing service, grazing/education for 9 months, you'd probably need to take time off the grazing or education during the really cold months of Michigan at least. And also take some time for kidding season for having your babies. So if you worked about 9 months of the year, you got paid $750 a week for grazing and did that for 16 weeks a year. And then adding the educational experiences onto that, the other 4 months of the year, I think you can make more money doing the education. But, and this is kind of just based on looking and talking to people who do these things. So coming out with an annual income of 46,000 as a guess estimate. Yeah, so what did I learn? Well, my ideas are evolving so quickly over the time that I started this grant till now. So yeah, it sort of still continue to evolve in my learning. Even since when I started, I had a different idea of what I would do with it. So I don't think I mentioned, but part of this whole thing was I made a website. The dairy inspector recommended that if I was going to start a educational service out of a mobile milking parlor and sell that milk to a cheesemaker, for instance, I wouldn't want to confuse that with my herd share because of legal reasons. You just don't want to mix those things. So I started kind of a website to sort of showcase all these items. And that was a big outreach point of my grant. So I'm still kind of reaching out and sharing that, sharing the design with people. So I'm excited to see what I still have to learn over the next few weeks. I think we're doing questions at the end. So thanks for having me and listening to my presentation.
Awesome, Leah, thanks. That was fantastic. I have a couple questions for you before we switch to the next presenter.
Oh, awesome.
Folks wanted to verify you've already built your trailer, correct?
I have not. This is a
Okay, so you're in
design
the process.
and an engineering grant. So yeah, I think it was like a $9,000 grant, and like $5,000 of that went into paying for the design and engineering, and then the other portion was for sharing the design and doing.
Okay, great. And that leads into our next question, was whether or not this was under a farmer rancher grant. And if so, because that's only a $9,000 grant, how did you fund the remaining balance of the project?
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yes. So I didn't build it. So that probably clears up that question. It's a theoretical project in which I'm sharing the floor plan, the bill of materials, and sort of my research with farmers and ranchers. So yes, it's a farmer rancher grant.
Great. And then the last question we have for you is if the cost of the milk parlor included labor to build it, or if you were planning on doing that yourself.
So the like 17 grand or whatever it was for the trailer included includes a place for water hookup. It doesn't include like the plumbing or like lighting. So that is correct. I did not include the cost for those things in the thing. So the basic trailer itself, water hookup, electric hookup for the generator, and then the basic rooms and windows and ramp and that kind of thing, all is included within that quote from Hallmark. But the other aspects would have to be added in. Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. Thanks so much. That's really exciting and has so many applications to even like mob grazing when you're off site and you have to be far away from a barn. Really excited for you for sharing that with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Lance Cray with New City Farm, and we are going to get him set up to talk about his SARE project. Lance, do you want to share your screen for a PowerPoint?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yep, you're sounding good.
Great. All right. So yeah, I'm glad to be with y'all, and I'm going to be talking about intercropping. And so I'm with New City Urban Farm, which is a program of New City Neighbors, and we're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You can go to the next slide. So just a little bit of history of New City Neighbors. We've been in existence since 2007, and we began with a bakery and after-school program in 2009. So our mission is to empower youth to reach their full potential. So all of our programming is meant to benefit youth in some way. In 2012, we started a 3-acre urban farm, and that's where we trialed everything that I'll be talking about. And then we have been existing on the property of Fourth Reformed Church since the farm started. And they had a kitchen that we were able to license to be a commercial kitchen. So we started making value-added soups in 2015. And in 2017, we built an outdoor patio that we use for a pop-up cafe that does wood-fired pizzas and then soups and salads as well. And then we run all those as a social enterprise. And so the idea is the revenue that we earn through those small businesses then provide youth employment to high school students in our surrounding neighborhood. So in a normal year, when we're not in a global pandemic, we would employ 20 youth, and they would work in either our farm or at our cafe. And so just a little bit of a sense of our social enterprise numbers in the year before the global pandemic was 2019. We were able to pay out $60,000 in youth employees to about 30 different youth, and we grossed $110,000 in sales between our urban farm and our cafe. Next slide. Then you can just kind of scroll through the next, there's just a bunch of pictures of our youth in our middle school bakery program. And then there's some youth at our outdoor cafe. And then this is just an aerial of the farm. I'm like standing on the church's steeple for this photo. Keep going. And then this is us looking back out to the church. So I'm standing in the field, and then that's looking out looking out over to the church. You can do the next slide. And then that's a little bit of our field. We have about 9,000 square foot in under plastic. So I think we have about nine caterpillar tunnels that are all 12 by 130. And then we have a larger one that's 14 by 140. And we have a new site that we just built a 168 by 30 foot tunnel. And then this is our youth kind of helping run our CSA pickup and some of our shareholders picking strawberries. And then more kind of customer service experiences. And getting to know each other while we're weeding. And this is our favorite shareholder doing you pick cherry tomatoes. So our shareholders do you pick peas and beans and cherry tomatoes. So that's them picking a bunch of that. And we do a 33-week season. So we do 3 CSAs that are each 11 weeks long, spring, summer, fall. And this is some produce from our fall share. So our first harvest is the first week of May, and our last harvest is the 3rd week of December. And that's just kind of what a normal CSA share would look like for our customers. And then this is us building that wood-fired pizza oven. I had a previous SARE Farmer Rancher grant that we got for trialing out this wood-fired pizza oven. And if you're a high school student, whenever you do anything, you should take a selfie and post it on Facebook. And then that's our completed oven. And then that's kind of where our point of sale is, and you can kind of see what the outdoor feel for the cafe is. And then that's our outdoor seating for the cafe. Making pizza. If you want to teach high school students how to cook healthy food, just build a wood-fired pizza oven. It takes care of itself after that. You can go to the next slide. So yeah, that's just kind of a little bit of an overview of the organization, just to kind of give some context, some added context. Actually, everything that you just saw, we're actually being forced to move our location this year. And so the church, after 10 years of partnership, has decided to part ways with us. So we had to abruptly move all that stuff, including, well, we're not going to be able to move the wood-fired pizza oven, but we will potentially have to move the whole farm operation. And we just bought a new property that we're completely renovating and doing a commercial kitchen, and we have 2 new growing sites. So we'll keep on keeping on. But yeah, I won't even get into why, but it's a really bad reason. But I'm not here to talk about that too much, but I just wanted to kind of let you know kind of the history of the organization and the context. But really, I'm here to talk about intercropping. And so why I like to intercrop is more for the higher yields for all available space. So we have been landlocked as a farm at 3 acres. And so we want to grow as much food as we can on a small space. And so I want to have every square foot of my fields growing something all the time. And intercropping helps me achieve that end. And so I'm not intercropping for like beneficials, like, oh, maybe onions next to tomatoes are going to create some kind of benefit. I kind of think of that more as companion planting. I don't really put much stock in that, to be honest. And it's not the intention behind why I intercrop. I'm really thinking about utilization of space. And then the other advantage I found to intercropping is you have less weeds because all available space is being used at all times. And so if you are using every square foot for a plant that you want to grow, that's less square footage for a plant that you don't want to grow. And so if our spacing can get tighter, then we don't have to cultivate in between rows. We will have established plants that will dominate the space. It may reduce insect pressure, but I'm not, I haven't researched that, and I'm not particularly thinking that would be the case. But, anytime you have a polyculture, you're in a better place, I think. You're more mimicking nature. And so a lot of our intercroppings are different plant families intercropped in the same space. So there might be some benefit to that. And then for some of our plantings, we have found that there's nice shading advantages. So one example might be we do those beans or peas on nets like you saw, and then we do actually rows of spinach on the sides before the peas are ready. And so spinach loves to bolt in the hot sun. The spinach is kind of ready at 30 to 40 days, and the peas are going to be ready at 55, 60 days. And so the tall peas growing on that vertical net will start to shade the spinach right when you want it to be shaded. And then the two best reasons, it's beautiful and it's fun. Next slide. So just some principles. You're going to want to have really good soil. I think our soil in our field tests at about 9% organic matter. I think you want to at least be around 5%. We've got to that high number by just applying a lot of plant-based compost. So the nice advantage of growing in a really intensive fashion is you can afford to put a lot of amendments in your space because you're getting an enormous yield from that space. So, you know, we're grossing about 90,000 on just under 3 acres. So we're grossing about 30,000 an acre. So putting $2,000 of plant-based composts on it to get to that end is doable. And so we've done that high-end plant-based compost. We're not doing that as much because we have such a good established soil at this point. But then we do amend with a custom organic mix based off of our soil testing. And we use a little bit of fish just if something doesn't look like it's as happy as it should be. So then if your soil is right, then the only limitation is the sun. So then you're just trying to use all available sunlight at all times. And then just a general principle to remember, sometimes I've heard of that book or seen the book, The Square Foot Gardener. That's a decent book to kind of help you visualize spacing. But I like to make the point that plants grow in circles and not squares. And so when you are thinking about planting, you shouldn't plant row to row right next to each other, like kind of like this. They should be staggered like this, and then you can actually get things closer and they can intersect each other. And kind of the analogy I like to give is when if anybody's old enough to remember Atari, we would do all of our graphics like where everything was made it as a square, and then that company Pixar came out and they made things circles, and then things can get put closer together if you use a circle kind of planting. And I'll have another slide that will kind of demonstrate that a little bit. And then another principle is you're going to want to keep your heavy feeders, brassicas especially, I've found, in the center of intercrop beds, and then light feeders like lettuce, let's say, on the outside. And when you are putting different plant families together, you'll learn that certain plant families will dominate spaces much quicker. And so brassicas love to just suck up nutrients from the soil, whereas like a lettuce is a really light feeder. It's not really pulling a lot of nutrients from the soil. And so one of our intercropping things is broccoli with lettuce on the outside. The lettuce is ready in 30 days and the broccoli is ready in about 70 days. And the broccoli really doesn't interfere with the lettuce, or vice versa. But if I were to put like cucumbers in the center and I were to put like bok choy on the outside, the bok choy would actually dominate the cucumbers, and you would have enormous bok choy and really dwarfed cucumbers. And I found cocopras are really the weakest plants in this kind of method. And then the idea then is you place your longer season crops in the center and your short season crops on the outside, and you're harvesting the short season crops before the long season crops are ready to be harvested. And then just experiment and have fun and discover what combos work for you. And I'll kind of show you some of the ones that we've used to kind of help get you on your way. Next slide. So some of our winning combos that I might have already mentioned, we like to do pole beans and trellis peas. This is right when they've been planted. So we do a 32-inch bed top, and you can kind of see these 3 little racing stripes going down the bed. So that center stripe is pole beans or peas that will then get trellised. And then the outer stripe is a spinach, or it could be an arugula, it could be a radish, some kind of 30-day quick crop. And so you're going to get a harvest of that 30-day crop, and then that center one will keep going. Next slide. Oh, that's my daughter. So I think she's beautiful. So I thought she should be in there, but she's picking pole beans. So you can see them. This is what those pole beans look like now that they've already grown all the way up. The spinach is no longer there. So we cultivate everything with a walk-behind tractor, a Grillo, and I have a rotary plow implement on it. The tiller actually fits in between the pea beds. And so we'll do like after the spinach is done, we go between those pea plantings with the tiller, and then I make a pass with the rotary plow, which actually is what makes that down trench, but it also trucks dirt to the right. So we're essentially cultivating with that tiller in between the pea rows, and then I'm actually hilling the peas up. And then that gets rid of the spinach and it gets rid of all the weeds on your peas. And so then that's how we kind of really quickly had a really nice clean pea bed or a pole bean bed. Next slide. And then this is probably my favorite intercropping combination. And so this is the brassica in the center with the lettuce on the outside. And you'll notice actually that one photo on the left has little baby bok choy on the outside. So the center is these broccolis and with a bok choy and a lettuce on the outside. I've kind of walked away from even those little baby bok choy because they're a brassica and they really like to pull, and you might get a slightly smaller broccoli head because those bok choy are actually going to mess with the broccoli a little bit. Whereas the lettuce will do nothing at all to it. We were pulling 9-10 inch broccoli heads out of the field with the intercrop lettuce. The lettuce really doesn't do anything at all to the plant. So the idea now is you can see kind of the photo to the right is actually Brussels sprouts too. And so this can be done with Brussels just as easily, or cauliflower. And so then that lettuce is ready to be harvested like right about now. And you can see the broccoli and the bok choy, or the broccoli and the Brussels are just starting to shade that lettuce. And that kind of gets to that shading advantage that I mentioned before. And so now that lettuce is ready, but we might not want all that lettuce all at the same time. And we might be able to get a week or two more of that lettuce sitting for us before it bolts because it's kind of hidden by the broccoli leaves or by the Brussels leaves. So we get a whole bunch of lettuce and then we have broccoli and Brussels later. And so I think broccoli and Brussels are tough to grow on 3 acres because they do take a lot of space for what they yield. And so by getting, we do a lot of that Selenova mix that you can see on the right. And so you can make a lot of nice lettuce mix for, 3 or 4 weeks from those plantings. And then you get the Brussels much later. And you also see that in the photo to the right, we've moved into putting a lot of that into landscape fabric. We generally don't put broccoli into landscape fabric. I think the amount of time it takes to put out the fabric, it doesn't make sense for broccoli. It's done in about 60, 70 days, and we can keep it pretty clean if you use some good weeding tools, smart weeding tools at the right time. Brussels are much longer, like they're in the field like 110 days or something. And so then we find that having them in fabric pays for itself. Next slide. You can see that Brussels and lettuce. And then behind that is, I think, our cherry tomatoes on nets, but next slide. We do this in the tunnels sometimes. This is a bit more common. I think a lot of people have been intercropping in tunnels for a while just because they're trying to get as much out of the tunnels as possible. And the one I like to do now the most is cucumbers and basil if I'm doing anything with cucumbers. And so the basil will last a lot longer in a tunnel because it won't get that downy mildew quite as quick because it won't get rained on. And so we like to do that one quite a bit. Next slide. That's just like a close-up. You can see those little basil plants hanging down that low. And it again gets to that shading thing. That basil is going to want to just keep flowering on you all the time. And so by having it kind of in that undergrowth underneath the cucumbers, it's going to kind of grow at the pace that basil really wants to actually grow at. Next slide. So the ones that we actually trialed extensively, and this was a new combination that we did for this project, was to intercrop sweet potatoes and onions and winter squash and garlic. And this was kind of an interesting and somewhat bizarre combination. And you got to kind of get the timing just right on this. but we've done it now for about 3 years, and it's been tremendously successful. I wouldn't grow any of these 4 crops any other way at this point. And so how we kind of just stumbled into this combination, all 4 of these crops present weedy nightmares. Maybe garlic, not so much because you can put it in straw, but we have really difficult time managing weeds in vining crops like sweet potatoes and winter squash. When I talked about having 9% organic matter, we grow weeds like you can't believe with 9% organic matter. And so even if we, you know, make a cultivation right between when the plants are just about ready to vine out, every year it was just like we're harvesting winter squash in 6 feet tall lamb's quarter, and same with sweet potatoes. It was just a nightmare every time. And so a lot of the growers that I'm in community with, we just saw kind of like, we're going to put all of our vining crops into landscape fabric. And I felt that the expense of that and the environmental impact of that and just the labor to put that out, I was like, man, that's a lot of all those things just for me to get just those crops. Like, I'm going to landscape fabric a huge block for winter squash, and all I'm going to get is, you know, 4 weeks worth of winter squash, or the same with sweet potatoes. So I started to ask myself, how can I get an additional crop out of that investment, both in the fabric and more importantly, in the time of laying it out, stapling it out, putting drip line underneath it. And so I thought about onions and garlic with it. And so that's kind of what led to that kind of idea. And I think I probably highlighted all those points. So we can go to the next slide. So for the garlic winter squash combination, can you go to the next slide? And I'm going to actually back up to this one. This will help with the visualization. This is kind of, remember that plants grow in circles, not squares idea. So essentially we have a 32-inch bed top. The inner row is going to either be the sweet potato plant or the winter squash plant. And we intentionally made it so that the fabric for each of these systems is exactly the same. We, if you're going to do this, you just kind of get a sheet of plywood with a 3-inch hole saw on it for a drill bit. And then you make this template, and then you put that on top of the fabric, and then you get a little torch that you would use for plumbing or something like that, and touch over each hole, and it will melt the fabric underneath. And that will keep the fabric from fraying, and it's also much faster. And so that's how we burnt all the holes in all the fabric. We've used the fabric now for at least 3 years, maybe 4, and it's still in good condition. And my hope is that we can get anywhere between 5 and 10 years from it. And if you burn the holes, I think that's possible. And so then that inner crop, that inner row is spaced at 12 inches, slightly off-centered. And then the outer rows are spaced quite tightly at 6 inches. And then that's either going to have a garlic head in it, or it's going to have an onion plant in it. We plant onions in sets of 2. So 2 onions per hole. Then you can go back one if you could. So that kind of gets to point 1, how the spacing works. Winter squash is in the center. And then we secure the fabric with fabric staples, like about every 6 feet or so. We've had no problem with them blowing away or anything like that. I actually have used 15-foot wide rolls and have continued to use those. If I were to go back in time, I would make them 10-foot wide instead of 15. They get very heavy to move after they've, at the end of the year in particular, because there's plant debris, and our beds are 130 feet long. So there's these 130-foot long by 15-foot wide sheets that are just really challenging to move. And so 15-foot wide covers 3 of our beds. I would make it 10-foot wide and just cover 2 of the beds. The other trick is when you use the fabric staples at the end of the year, you're better served not to take the fabric staples out of the roll. So when you're pulling it up, just leave the fabric staples right in the fabric. It takes a lot of time to pull them all out, but they actually get a little rusty at the end of them. And that actually helps them stick into the soil much better. When they're really fresh and new, they're like too smooth and they go right into the soil, but they also can like pull out of the soil really quickly. So we actually like staples that have been used for at least a year. And we do put drip irrigation under the fabric. We put 2 lines down each bed top. Okay, we can go forward again. We can go to the next one. And so a little bit of the timing, you know, garlic is planted in the fall the year before. So that's another nice thing is we have all of our winter squash beds prepped in the fall of the year before, which is nice. I'm always looking to have less to do in the spring because that's a busy time of the year. And so we'll have probably, I think we did 15 beds of this that are 130 foot long. We lay all that out and we plant the garlic into the holes at the edges. And we haven't had any problem with garlic heaving. I've had that question asked before. It does help a little bit if you can get it in October so that they root out a little bit. Or sometimes if they don't root out, they can heave a little bit. When you do plant garlic and straw, you're less prone to have that because it will be mulched. Then the winter squash is transplanted like around June 28. And this last year, I think I did it around the 15th. And we use, if we do butternut squashes, we do delicatas and we do spaghettis. The butternut that I use is a variety I think called Waldo. It's like a hybrid that's about 90 days or so. I wouldn't want to put a Waltham in there that's like 110 days because you might not have enough time. And so we like to plant them a bit later than a lot of people would plant. And so you just want to be kind of cognizant of that. And that gives the garlic plenty of time to kind of take the space. And the trick is you need to have those winter squash not vine out and take up the space before you harvest the garlic. That's a very important thing. And so that's why I'm trying to push that winter squash planting back, because the garlic isn't really going to be ready to be harvested until maybe the first week of July or the second week of July. And if you plant the winter squash too early, it will vine out, take the whole space, and then you're either going to have to mess up your vines a lot, and that's not good for the plants. And so kind of pushing that date back a little bit is important. Next slide. And so this is kind of how that would then work out. You can see on July 2, they're just kind of getting established. And then July 9, you can tell those winter squash are ready to start taking over the space. And so that's right around when you want to start getting the garlic out. You go next slide. And then this is July 16th. The garlic's still in. This is the year before this last. We would have actually harvested the garlic around July 16. What we learned in this is in 2019, what we learned is if you wait too long, the garlic can be hard to get out of the ground, and garlic can get a little stuck in the soil if you're not careful with it. And because you have the fabric, you can't like get there with a pitchfork or anything to get the garlic out. So you want to make sure your garlic tops aren't browned out completely, because then when you kind of yank on the plant, the whole stalk will just rip off. So if you get the garlic when it's like still just starting to brown at the top, it's still actually full size. And I think you get less split garlic when you harvest it at this point. You want to be careful that you don't go too long. And I think in 2019, we let it go too long. And so we went all the way to July 22. I would have pulled it in July 16. And that is what we did this last year. And that worked better for us. You can also see that winter squash is really starting to take the space at July 22. Next slide. And then we harvested the garlic, and that's what the field looks like afterwards. You can tell we got nice big full-size garlic heads. We had the same situation in 2020. We had no small garlic whatsoever. They actually are bigger than what we did before because they're in that fabric. They don't have any weed pressure on them. I should pause and say that they do have weed pressure on them. In that little 3-inch hole can still grow weeds. So we do have to do some quick like hand weeding around the garlic plants once or twice. It takes about a half a day with 3 people to do this block that's 130 by 50. So it's totally manageable and within the range of what would make all these crops profitable. But that's what the field looked like after, and you can go to the next slide. And then you can see this is August 15. Now it's just all squash, and you can see how clean that field is for a winter squash field. All I see is winter squash. And so even the holes, even though they had garlic, by that time that they get pulled out, no weeds are going to grow in there. because that soil's already been hand weeded a little bit, and the winter squash just completely dominates the space. Next slide. And then that was some of the butternuts that we pulled from there. We had all great good-sized winter squash as well. So it was a great winning combination. Next slide. And then the onion sweet potatoes, there's not a lot different to it. The one difference is the onions are going in the early spring. So we went in April 21 in 2019. We did about the same this year. And then in 2019, we put our sweet potatoes out pretty early. I think May 21, and that was because the year before I ordered my sweet potato slips online. The year before they shipped them 2 weeks late, and so I ordered for an earlier ship date, thinking they were going to do that, and then they came right on time. And so then, unfortunately, May 21 was a little early, I think, for sweet potatoes in Michigan, depending on what May 21 is doing. I like the soil to be fairly warm, and sweet potatoes are pretty wimpy with cold temperatures. So I think June 1 is your ideal day if you can get your sweet potato slips right on time. One thing that I actually have started doing on that whole sweet potato things is I actually order them earlier, and I put them in, like, they come in these packages of 100, and we put them in 4-inch pots now, and put a potting soil in them and just like water them a little bit, and keep them in the greenhouse for a week or two. And that actually, I think, helps the sweet potato recover a little bit, because sometimes after they come in the mail, they look really wilty and bad. And then it's allowed us to time our sweet potato planting with when we want to plant it. And that's both like, hey, it's going to be 30 degrees tonight. We definitely don't want to put sweet potato slips out. But then we love to transplant into this black fabric if we know like rain is coming, or we'll put overhead irrigation on it, because this black fabric gets hot and it's like kind of transplanting into a parking lot was what it can feel like. And so if it's like June 1 and it's 90 degrees and sunny for like 6 days, that can be really tough on your transplants unless you put overhead irrigation on it. So even though we have drip irrigation underneath, we have portable overhead, and a lot of times we'll bring that over if there isn't like cloudy, rainy day on the forecast or something like that. Next slide. That's what it looked like in June 20. We probably would have done like a quick hand weeding at this point, but you can see the onions are really taking the space, and you got little sweet potatoes in there. Next slide. That's June 28. You can see how clean the field is because of that fabric, and because we've done one hand weeding pass. Next slide. So that's July 1. Now the onions are really starting to bulb up for us. Next slide. That's July 9. You can tell we missed, like, we did one hand weeding, I think, this year in 2019. And we didn't do a second one, and we didn't do it quite perfect enough. And you can see some weed. Next slide. Just look at this July 9 and remember how clean it was the slide before, but we'll go to the next slide. Oh, okay. So they're sizing up. You can see a little bit of grass coming around those onions. Next slide. That's August 2nd, and that's when we're supposed to be harvesting, and you barely see anything but grass. So in like 2 weeks, the garlic, my poor intern there, harvesting these onions in grass that was like 4 feet tall. I went on vacation for a week, and we lost total control of that field, and so we did not have this problem in 2020 because we made sure we did that second hand weeding, and we made sure it was very clean, because we really can grow weeds in our fields, especially grass. And the problem is you can't really pull the grass out once it gets somewhat established, because the onions are bulbing up at that time, and it's terrible to disrupt onion roots when they're trying to bulb up, and they bulb up on equinox. you don't really want to mess with them at that point. And so that would be fine. We still got great big size onions in 2019, but all that grass really shaded the sweet potatoes, and that was not good. And so in 2019, we didn't have a very good sweet potato yield. In 2020, we didn't have it. And that was because we made sure that we kept those holes really clean. Next slide. That was the crew that harvested all those onions and took out all of those grass as well to reclaim the sweet potatoes. But that was a lot of work, and it was terrible. But it was a hardworking crew. Next slide. Then the sweet potatoes did kind of emerge and reclaim the space back. And next slide. And they did okay. This is probably one of the best plants in the lot. We still got a lot of sweet potatoes, but in comparison to this year, I think, you know, we were probably getting like 300 pounds on a 130-foot row, and we were probably doing more like 500 or 600 pounds of sweet potatoes per row this year. And a lot of them that are like 2-pound sweet potatoes. So keeping the weeds clean is important. Next slide. And so there's a little bit more of this kind of the sweet potatoes. Next slide. Conclusions, both methods can definitely work. It's very important to hand weed consistently. It's a lot of work to move the 15-foot fabric. So like I said, I would go back to the 10-foot wide. I think I've already mentioned that, you know, transplanting a cool rainy day or having overhead irrigation is important. And it's a lot of work to set up the fabric. You know, it's probably like 3 people the whole day to kind of set up all that fabric. But I think about time in 2 things as a farmer. I think about overall time, but I think about time and important points of time. And so whenever I can get more time in the middle of the season, I'm better served. And so if I can set up my entire field for winter squash and garlic in November and not have to do anything other than just stick winter squash plants in a hole in June, when I have a million other things to do, I've really done something that needs to be done. And so I think that's one of the advantages of the fabric and of the system. Next slide. Just my contact info, and I'm happy to, I'm not sure what my time and limit was, and I'm happy to take any questions. I can check.
Thanks, Lance. That was great. We've got 4 questions for you. First question from Ned is, do you water, and what is your source of water on the farm?
Yep. So yeah, we definitely water with that drip irrigation generally, but then we do have portable overhead lines too. We do have a well, and so then yeah, we water from a well.
Great. Next question from Melanie. Where do you get your compost? Do you make it on site or do you import it? And if you import it onto the farm, what's your average cost?
Yeah, we bring in at least 1 dump truck of compost, like a 20-yard dump truck a year. We used to bring in a tandem, so you know, it's like a train, like a dump truck with 2 things on it, so it's a 40-yard load. Our first couple of years, we were actually bringing in 2 tandems. It's about, I think a single load is about $600 delivered, and a double tandem is about $1,000 delivered. And then we, I don't know, is this broadcast like nationally or how local is this? I don't know, but in Michigan,
Michigan.
In Michigan, we use Morgan's compost for our soil amendments. And so I use Crop Service International. They give me a soil recommendation based off of the biology of the soil. And then I send that over to Morgan's and get a custom blend mix. We have plenty of phosphorus, so we never put that in. We use feather meal generally for our nitrogen. And then it's really more of kind of trace stuff like manganese and a little bit of boron, a little bit of potash every so often. And so I'll get a 2,000-pound tote with my potted soil from them at the beginning of the year, so I don't have to pay for a separate shipping cost. That's about $500 for the 3 acres. And then we space that so it's like a half a bucket per bed to put those down. And so that's kind of what I'm doing for amendments.
Great, thanks. And then last question, actually I have 2 more questions. Do you train your peas up the trellis? And if so, how much labor does that require?
No, the peas and the peas and pole beans have their own ability to grow up the net. So basically those are 8-foot green T-posts. And then they actually have a little thing on the top of them for an electric fence cap. And then there's a braided, like a 7-braid steel wire that runs along the top. And then the nets have a string then that gets wrapped around the top of that fabric, those nets. You can buy them in Johnny's, like, 7-foot tall nets that are 7 inches square or whatever. But you do need to have some kind of top steel cable to secure those nets to, or they'll rip down off the T-posts every time. And we do those nets for all 3 of the crops, the peas, beans, and we actually do our cherry tomatoes in those nets as well. The cherry tomatoes, we do need to train. We actually use tomato clips and clip the cherry tomatoes right into the nets. And then they'll grow through the nets quite a bit, but you do need to manage the cherry tomatoes. But with the peas and pole beans, they'll completely self-manage themselves. So there's no labor there. Cucumbers will actually manage themselves up as well. So unless you want to prune your cucumbers, we don't prune our cucumbers. They just grow up the net on their own accord.
Great, thank you. That's a lot of great advice. Do you know whether or not landscaping fabric is allowed in certified organic farming?
We aren't certified organic, so I can't say for sure, but from my knowledge, it should be okay. I know JM48, who is certified organic, is using that a lot. I know Curtis Stone is using a lot of landscape fabric. I believe he's certified organic. I only knowledge is that plastic should not be left over a year in organic rules. So I don't know how that would pertain to landscape fabric, but so maybe there would be an issue with the landscape fabric overwintering. I doubt it though. I think you should be fine.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. You can use plastics, but not the biodegradable ones, and you can't leave them in long-term in the soil so that they're breaking down. That's all the questions we have for you. Thank you so much. We are going to now turn it to Adam Ingrayo, who Dr. Adam Ingrayo is with North Central Region SARE. He serves as one of the coordinators for Michigan, along with Dean Boz. And Adam is also with MSU Extension. So we are going to turn it over to Adam.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks very much, all of the farmer ranchers who were talking about their experience working with the SARE program. I'm going to talk a little bit about just SARE in general and some of the programs that we offer for those of you that are new to SARE or maybe don't know everything that we offer at SARE. So the USDA SARE program, a Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education program, we go by our acronym NC SARE. The SARE program is a competitive grant and education program that's operating in every state of the United States. And really, the purpose of SARE is to provide grants and educational outreach to advance sustainable agriculture in America. And depending on the region that you're in, applicants to these grants can be farmers, they can be ranchers, they can be researchers, they can be graduate students. There's opportunities for nonprofit organizations. So a lot of different opportunities for individuals to fund projects related to sustainable agriculture. SARE is a science-based grassroots grant program. So we look to fund projects that are focused on science-based sustainable ag solutions and with a strong farmer rancher involvement. That's one of the things that we really try to focus on, whether it's a research grant, an education grant. We really want to see farmers involved in these projects at every step of the way. We have 4 regions within the United States that we operate SARE in. The North Central region, which is where Michigan is located. We also have the Northeast region, the Southern region, and the Western region. And each region is guided by a volunteer administrative council that makes the funding decisions and sets our priorities for those regions. So really, when we think about SARE, SARE is really kind of a really interesting part of USDA. We are part of the National Institutes of Food and Agriculture, so NIFA, and we have funded more than 5,000 projects throughout these 4 regions around sustainable agriculture. The SARE outreach materials that we do produce, they really are focused on being practical information for individuals, both researchers, farmer ranchers, youth. We want to see this information that comes out of these grants that we provide. We want to see those implemented into our communities. And so that's one of the real big things about working with SARE, is having that outreach capacity. What is that? What are you going to do with the information you find out once you have it? And this is a great example of how these farmer ranchers are meeting that objective of getting their information out into the community by participating in a farmer panel just like this. That's what we're looking for. How are you going to get this knowledge that you find through these grant opportunities out into the larger community? So successful SARE projects, they really simultaneously address the 3 principles of sustainability that we have as part of the SARE model. And these principles are improving the profitability of farmers and associated agribusinesses, sustaining and improving the environmental quality and natural resource base on which agriculture depends, and enhancing the quality and life of farmer ranchers, our communities, and society as a whole. So the SARE has educational partnerships with agencies, universities, extension services, and NGOs, nonprofit organizations, agriculture professionals, and then also working with farmer ranchers. I think probably one of our, I don't want to say it's a hidden resource. It's definitely not hidden, but I think one of the resources that we provide outside of just the grant opportunities that a lot of folks don't know, but is probably one of the best comprehensive libraries of sustainable agriculture materials in existence in the United States, is our Learning Center. So we have an entire library on the SARE website of books, bulletins, fact sheets on everything related to sustainable agriculture. Some really amazing publications that have been really built to help you succeed as someone that is working in the sustainable ag realm. We have a lot of media outreach on those things. There's portfolios on our websites with in-depth reports on current topics. You can also find lists of grants that have been funded in the past, so to kind of get an idea of what are grants that have been successful. We offer conference sponsorships. There's just countless online resources through our Learning Center. And so one of the things when I'm working with new farmers or with individuals that are really trying to break into sustainable agriculture, I always send them to our Learning Center. It is a one-stop shop for just a tremendous amount of resources around sustainable agriculture. All right, so the grants that we offer through the North Central Region SARE, we have several different grants available, and I'm going to talk about a few of them that are particularly relevant for farmers. So the full portfolio of grants that we offer the Research and Education Grant, the Professional Development Grant, we offer a Graduate Student Grant, a Farmer Rancher Grant, a Youth Educator Grant, and a Partnership Grant. And the 3 grants that I'm going to be highlighting today that are particularly relevant to farmers is the Farmer Rancher Grant, the Youth Educator Grant, and the Partnership Grant. So let's take a real quick look at those grants. So the first one is the Farmer Rancher Grant, and that is truly the grant that SARE has developed for farmer ranchers. It's the grant that all of the speakers today are on. And so it is a true Farmer Rancher Grant. It's the grant to allow farmers and ranchers to do some on-farm research, education, or develop a demonstration space to help show individuals how sustainable agriculture can offer solutions for farms. This particular grant, it is the terms of the grant, it's up to 23 months. So you can use the grant for up to 23 months. And it's typically when we have individuals that apply as individuals, so a single farm applying, the grant will top out at $9,000 for those 23 months. But if you and a buddy decide that you want to partner together and do some farm research on 2 different farms, you can apply for up to $18,000, or if it's a group of 3 or more farms, you can apply for up to $27,000. So opportunities not only for you as an individual to do some really cool on-ground research or education on your farm, but also an opportunity for you to collaborate with other farmers working in this same area, giving you even more capacity to answer important questions, but also gives you the opportunity to work collectively together to do those outreach components, farm field days, things like that, to get that knowledge out into the public. So the Farmer Rancher Grant, for those of you that are interested in that grant, and I hope many of you are, because if you are a farmer and you're working in sustainable ag, this is the grant for you. That grant period, every year, this grant opens up in August and typically closes right around the beginning of December. So you're going to want to keep your eyes open up for that. And you can definitely go to our website, our North Central Region SARE website, to learn more about all of these grants as well. Another grant that you should be thinking about is the Youth Educator Grant. So this is a grant that is eligible for individuals that are educators at universities, folks that work at community colleges, high schools, grade schools. Farmer ranchers can apply for this grant, homeschoolers can apply for this grant. But really what this particular grant is designed to do is it's really designed for you as an individual, as a farmer or as an educator, to help young people understand sustainable practices in agriculture, or help them start to identify sustainable ag as a career opportunity. So really, when we think about the Youth Educator Grant, what we're thinking about is shaping the next generation of sustainable farmers. Really, really noble activity to bring in those youth to help them understand the importance of the work that we do as sustainable farmers. This grant is up to 23 months as far as the terms are concerned, and up to $4,000 for the award. This application period for this particular grant is from August to November. So again, wanting to make sure that you keep your eyes open there as it comes up to the end of the season. A lot of times, because of these August open dates, sometimes these can kind of catch us off guard as farmers, because boy, August is a busy time of the year, especially as we start to wrap up into fall. So make sure you get this on your calendar, that August is these opening dates for the grants that we're talking about here. All right, and then finally, the partnership grant I wanted to recommend. Now, the partnership grant is not a grant that a farmer rancher would apply for. So you as an individual farmer would not apply for this, but why I put it on here is because this is a really cool opportunity for you to work with an ag professional as a farmer. So what we mean by partnership grant is essentially this is an opportunity for someone at a university, extension services, someone that works for a nonprofit agency that's working in education and grants, and bring those individuals together with farmers to do something really cool. And that can be something like on-farm research, it can be a demonstration farm, or it could be like educational activities related to sustainable agriculture. So you as a farmer would be a participant on this grant with someone that would be, working for a larger organization that's focused on education around agriculture. This is a larger grant because you would have an ag professional as the lead, up to 24 months. $40,000 is where that grant tops out, and the application period for the partnership grant is August through October. So a lot of you as farmers are already working with extension services. Maybe you've got someone that's working for extension or working for a university that's already doing a little bit of on-farm research with you. This would be an opportunity to kind of formalize that and get some funding behind it to help out with the costs associated for that research. So that is just a preview of some of the great resources that we have available at North Central Region SARE. If you have any questions about any grant programs, as you start to think about them, as you start to apply for them, please feel free to reach out to myself or Dean. We are the co-state coordinators for SARE here in the state of Michigan, and you have both of our contact information there available to you. I will say, just for myself, my cell phone number is there at the bottom, but we are still working from home at Michigan State University. And I actually live in the remote part of the Eastern UP. So for me, definitely the email address will be the best way to get a hold of me. But you can reach out to us at any time with questions about SARE projects, SARE resources, or maybe just questions about sustainable agriculture in general. And thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. We have a couple more questions in the chat that we want to get through. Adam, one of the ones I'm going to ask you right off the bat, two for you actually. Does the Youth Educator Grant cover wages for youth to work on a sustainable farm?
Ooh, that is a really good question. And I actually don't know the answer to that question. Dean, Beth, or Joan, who are also on the call from SARE, any of you have feedback on wages for youth in the Youth Educator Grant?
Joan is saying, yes, it does. It could be covered. So that's great.
Okay, there we go. Those are the folks that have the right answers.
The other question we're asking or getting is, can we talk a little bit about other grants that are available for farmers as principal investigators? I can tell you, I know SARE is one of the most user-friendly formats that's available out there for farmers. There are certain farmer demographics that have certain funding pots, like if you're a beginning farmer or a veteran, there's grant programs there. You can always partner with an organization like SARE or MIFFS or MSU Extension to go after a big research idea if you're kind of looking at a really large research project. But Adam, what other grants are you aware of that farmers can use to conduct on-farm research? Are there any?
You know, usually with on-farm research, from my experience, SARE is one of the very few that actually allow farmers to be the lead. Most on-farm research projects, you're going to have somebody from a university or a nonprofit organization that works in this space regularly to be the lead. So I think that's kind of the limitation with a lot of those grants, is that usually with the larger research grants, you're a participant, you're not necessarily the lead. And that's the difference with the SARE grant, is you are actually the lead as the farmer. You're doing the research. The one thing I can say as far as grants, it's not related to research though. There have been a lot of grants that I have known smaller farmers applying for right now through their economic development corporations, some CARES money that's been coming out that has been available. So that's something to keep your mind on. But these research grants, as far as for farmer ranchers, are pretty few and far between. I actually don't know any other ones outside of SARE that would have you as a lead on there. There might be some community grants that would be available that could do something like that, but nothing at the federal level that I'm aware of. Maybe Dean has something to add there.
One of the grant programs that Jean just recommended is also available to farmers, not so much for research. Research can be a part of it, but it's the value added producer grant, which allows you to do things like build a certified kitchen in your farm and do something really unique as far as diversifying farm revenue streams or accessing or enhancing resiliency of the local food system. There's several grants like that from USDA. There's a local food promotions grant. MIFFS tries to do really, keep a tab on what grants are coming out for farmers that are available and post them to our website. So definitely stay tuned for that. I haven't seen any other suggestions from Jean or Dean on some of the other grant opportunities that are available. We do have a couple of questions. Yeah, it is. We know several farms in Michigan that have accessed it. Provide more information from that if you follow up with us after the webinar today. I have a couple more questions about projects that were given by the presenters. So one of the questions for Frank Corrado is, can you talk a little bit about how NRCS worked with your project and how you partnered with them?
Sorry, I had to unmute. You're saying about working with NRCS?
Yeah, can you just talk a little bit about how NRCS was involved with your project and how you partnered with them?
Sure. NRCS is a great resource for us in our pawpaw operation. That office has been incredibly helpful over the years to us, and in terms of getting buildings built and roads built, and they've just been an incredible operation. Jeff Douglas and Steve Bear. Steve Bear, for example, has come out and helped us do burns in the spring of the wildflower field. And that has been a real help to us. We were not able to get one done this year because of COVID. It was delayed, and by the time we got it done, it was too late. So that we're hoping for next year. But, you know, that was, for example, a real help. Steve Bear was also out there for the dedication, and he's incredibly good with children like Adam. So NRCS also provided actually we were able to do the 2-acre parcel because of a set aside that NRCS funded of that piece, those 2 acres of our property, conservation set aside. It's funded by FSA, but NRCS was the driver in terms of helping us identify that set aside that eventually became the Bees Pleeze Trail. So this is an agency, NRCS, that can be great help to anybody, I think, that's working on a SARE project. You should definitely talk with those folks. And I also wanted to add a shout out to Joan Benjamin and her group that really drive these SARE projects and keep us straight and forward on the path to getting the grant application correct when we get it in there, and pushing us to do good evaluations as well.
Great, thanks so much, Frank. Marie from North Central Region SARE also has dropped some links to guides in the chat. One is about federal funding opportunities for farmers, anyone seeking government help to foster innovative enterprise in forestry and agriculture. And then there's a great grassroots guide to farm bill programs that are available to farmer. That's through National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. We'll also post that to the MIFFS website. It's one that we regularly take to display events and have highlighted for our producers. And then the other questions that we have on the line, I think, are to Lance, but there may be other folks who can answer them. They center around landscape fabric. So Lance, the question we have for you is, do you till your beds prior to laying landscape fabric and add your soil amendments beforehand?
Yeah, we till them first and add the amendments before laying the fabric.
Great.
We do that with like with that Grillo walk behind, and so then it can be a little tricky. We use the rotary plow to build a raised bed, and so you just kind of have to space that fairly well so that the down trough is lined up to your fabric. But that's what we do.
Okay. And then how long are your landscaping sheets?
Our beds are 130 foot long. So.
Okay. Do you mitigate, how do you mitigate underlaid failure and drip line below fabric during the season? So like, how do you identify if your drip line's not working or something happens?
Yeah, that can be annoying. I mean, the nice thing is when it's under the fabric, it doesn't move as much because you're not moving it to weed or anything like that. And you're not using scuffle hose or anything that will disrupt it. It's not getting blown around because it's underneath the fabric. But sometimes when you're harvesting, particularly the lettuce, the crew will, cut the lettuce head, and then they might inadvertently nick the drip line. One thing you can do is when my crew is doing that a lot, I make sure that irrigation is on when they're harvesting it, so they know they're puncturing the line over and over again. So that's one trick. I don't tend to do that, but a group of 6 high school students, they're not always paying as much attention. So that's one trick. But then, yeah, if we do have, you can get couplings for drip line. So if you do dink it, then you have to kind of grab the line from one of those holes and then repair it and get it back together.
Great, thank you so much. Seeing as there's no more questions, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, especially our presenters, Frank, Leah, and Lance, and Adam. It was a pleasure having you today. I'm gonna have Paige Lindau, who is on the webinar. technical assistance navigator from Michigan with National Young Farmers Coalition that is partnering with us to launch a survey statewide about technical assistance, effectiveness, and needs in Michigan for farmers. So Paige is going to drop the link to that survey into the chat. We ask that you take a time to check that out if that's something you're interested in, or if you're interested in working directly with Paige in an interview to talk about your experiences with various technical assistance in the state. We'd love to have you do that. Paige can put her contact information in the chat as well. Michigan Food and Farming Systems is a statewide nonprofit that works with beginning and historically underserved farmers to connect them to each other and to resources. Similar to what we did today with sharing you all some of the opportunities that are available through SARE. We are also always very excited to help farmers access farmer research grants and partner. We can pull together teams. So please think of us if you consider applying for a SARE grant, or if you want more information about SARE. We have direct lines to their staff and also experience navigating their grant programs. It's a wonderful resource, and we hope that you all have a great day. Thanks again for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Frank. Have a good one.
You guys too. Take care. Bye.
Bye. My contact info, if you're still online, is jen@miffs.org, MIFFS.org, and I'll type that in the chat. Thanks, guys.
Bye.